world's nations are moving towards a more globally linked symbiotic existence, and it is vital to prepare our young learners to understand, communicate, and compete in this global society. In order to achieve this, we must arm them with the strongest weapon ever, their minds. The people who are held accountable for strengthening the minds of our young are, of course, teachers. Teachers are believed to be responsible for the students of the United States to achieve high-ranking test scores. I feel effective teachers instill a value of learning and portray this very humbly by choosing a career that is very arduous with diminutive pay. After doing research on this topic, I raised the question, are the tests that are administered to determine the ranks of nations inaccurate? The test results portray the United States as a nation at risk, but I don't believe they are very truthful in their tellings. After doing the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, is an organization of 30 plus countries whose intention is to work together to strategically analyze and solve global issues and problems designed with the goal of improving education. And I applaud that cause. This organization administers the Program for International Student Assessment, PISA. The test format is both multiple choice and short answer. The assessment is administered in 30 countries to an average of 5,000 15-year-old students per country. The exam has been given to these students since the year 2000, on a 3-year cycle. Students are assessed in the areas of reading, math, and science. PISA's intent is not exclusively to measure the curriculum mastery, but also real-life problem solving and application of content knowledge. China led the ranks in 2009 PISA results. Finland, Singapore, Canada, and Poland followed. Surprisingly, who was trailing closely behind? The United States. China and Singapore are newcomers to PISA, but Finland and Canada have been scoring in the top ranks since PISA first began. The International Association for Evaluation of Educational Achievement, IEA, is an international organization that designs an assessment referred to as Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, or TIMSS, T-I-M-M-S-S. International comparison researchers wanted to assess thematic and science knowledge of students in the grades 4 through 8. The test is more accurate based on comparison to PISA. This assessment is multiple choice and is administered to over 500,000 students in 60 countries. Their intent is to compare the abilities of students in the United States with other nations. Thus, TIMSS exams are mostly geared towards the United States students. This exam is given in a 4-year cycle, and the first test was administered in 1995. In 2007, TIMSS decided that on average, learners in the United States, both in 4th and 8th grade, scored above the TIMSS mean score of 500. The leaders for 4th grade were Hong Kong, Singapore, China, and Japan. The 8th grade leading countries were China, Korea, Singapore, and Hong Kong. However, Finland and Canada, who ranked in the top 5 of PISA, did not participate in this assessment. There were other discrepancies among the top 5 scorers for both tests. For instance, Japan ranked in the top 10 but not in the top 5 of PISA's results. They placed significantly lower in PISA. TIMSS found that the top 5 scoring countries relied considerably on higher math problems that centered on making real-life connections. This might suggest that it could account for higher mathematical achievement in comparison with the United States. On the subject of science, the United States tends to apply a variety of teaching strategies, whereas higher achieving nations centralize around one mode of instruction. The 3 teaching modes were independent practical activities, independent seatwork activities, and whole group discussion programs. It seems the United States balances all three equally. However, higher scoring forerunners relied heavily on specific teaching method using one considerably less. Another factor that should be considered is the United States, on average, ranks above the world average score in reading, but then again statistically below the world average in math. Bearing in mind, the United States scores are compared only with the highest performing competitive nations of Korea, Japan, China, and Singapore. And the outcome does seem bleak. Excuse me. If you look at a wider spectrum, it appears that 65 of the competing countries, the United States came in 17th place and ranks just under the top 25% of all the countries worldwide. If the PISA scores indicate that the United States economy and its success is at risk, then it should be assumed that these constantly evolving test results of international comparison is obvious that the United States students are properly equipped with a knowledge base to surely and rightly compete in a global economy. Global thinking is a way of becoming aware of our growing interconnectedness to others around the world, which includes not only the basic human similarities, but also economic connections. Globalization theories help students recognize the commonality of worldly problems and encourage students to be proactive in solving these problems. Global thinking is, in my opinion, an unavoidable movement that encourages people to consider our race, mankind, our home planet Earth, and inspires us to move away from political ways of thinking where the main goal is to protect the wealth and the privileged. There are other factors to consider, and it appears that these teachers are being drugged through a political propaganda, and our nation is not at risk. We can get involved in the political mumbo-jumbo and demonstrate that we are effective teachers. Prohibiting teachers from participating in such demonstrations would violate our constitutional rights that our United States of America is founded on. A federal court in Alabama ruled that a broad prohibition would violate teachers' rights where they tried barring raises to any teacher who participates in, encourages, and condones any extracurricular activities or demonstrations. We can do this. We can fight. We must begin looking at the tests that are being administered instead of the dutiful jobs that the teachers are doing and start arguing these points. We need to get loud, and they need to hear us.